Hello again, everybody. This is Megan Cuniff here to bring you the latest on Tory Lanez's sentencing for shooting Megan Thee Stallion. It's a big night. Prosecutors' sentencing memorandum is in. I've got a copy of it, and I've got a story up on my website for you, legalaffairsandtrials.com. They are asking for 13 years in prison for Tory Lanez. You can see the conclusion right here. It's a 12-page memo that outlines exactly what they want the judge to do, Judge Hereford, and this was filed tonight. Tory's lawyers had an option of filing a sentencing memorandum. I emailed Matthew Barhoma and Jose Baez to see if they'd filed anything. I haven't heard back. Kathy Ta did tell me via email that they had filed a motion to delay the sentencing, and they're actually asking for more time to file their memorandum. She said that they're going to be objecting to the delay of the sentencing. Right now the sentencing is still scheduled for the 13th. As I explained in another video and in an article, Matthew Barhoma and Jose Baez currently have a petition into the appellate court to try to disqualify Judge Hereford, and they've also got a stay request in. So the court hasn't ruled on that, so I'm sure their request to Judge Hereford asked that he stay the sentencing next week until the appellate court rules. So I don't think Judge Hereford's going to take well to that request, but there's also a possibility that the appellate court is going to rule on the disqualification request between now and a week from now, which is the sentencing, so it could all be mooted. But it'll be interesting to see what happens if we don't have any kind of sentencing memorandum from the defense, because usually that is something we see. They lay out their own recommendation. But I've got a copy of Prosecutors' memo here, and as I explain in my article, they are asking for 6 years for the initial assault, the first-degree assault with a firearm, and then there are two aggravating factors. One is the presence of a gun, and the other is the fact that he caused Megan great bodily harm, and they want 4 extra years and 3 extra years for that. So it would all be served consecutive, and it would be 13 years total in state prison. And they really get into the details of all of Tory's pretrial conduct here. They talk about his 3 violations for his 3 court order violations. And frankly, as somebody who just started covering this case right at the trial, hadn't covered any of the pretrial stuff, didn't know anything about this, I learned a lot, and I was like, wow, these would have been good stories. I mean, initially, him violating the protective order at that Rolling Loud fest, I'm sure this was just some ultra big deal online, and you know, it's just the stuff of legend. But I actually hadn't heard about this, but prosecutors lay out how Megan was performing at the Rolling Loud festival, and Tory wasn't one of the performers, but DaBaby was, and while she was performing, he ended up going through security, going into the green room, and he was within 100 yards of her when she was performing, which was a violation of the protective order. And then it also says in here that she heard that he and DaBaby tried to rush the stage when she was when she was performing. You know, like I said, I'm aware that this was probably just the hugest deal online when it happened. But like I said, I hadn't heard anything about that. But then I had heard about the assault on August, the singer, and that's detailed in here, as you can see. Describe the altercation here as basically Lane sucker punching him, and you know, saying that he was wearing several rings on his fingers at the time that he punched Mr. Alsina, and Mr. Alsina sustained injuries to his mouth, arm, and knee, and was bleeding profusely. Mr. Alsina also believed he may have sustained a concussion. And they're saying that the pretrial conduct began with an October 2020 Instagram live video, or at least this is the first incident that they cite, in which he accused Megan of pushing a false narrative and suggested she was lying about being shot. They also bring up his post-trial conduct, the allegations against prosecutors, the false allegations about the DNA stuff that ignited everybody. You know, him saying that their new DNA expert had found things that he hadn't even actually found, him falsely accusing prosecutors of lying and manipulating evidence. But they said that he was falsely accusing the prosecution team of falsifying and suppressing evidence without any basis in fact or reality. And it says the people are not suggesting this court penalize the defendant for not accepting a plea deal. However, the people ask this court to consider that the defendant's actions go beyond him exercising his right to a jury trial. The defendant actively invited harassment of the victim by spreading misinformation to his large following in an effort to galvanize the public against the victim and even the prosecution team without any regard to the dangers it posed to the parties nor the impact it would have on the victim. The defendant has weaponized misinformation to his large following to such a degree that it has a lasting traumatic impact on the victim. The defendant not only lacks remorse, he is clearly incapable of accepting any responsibility for his own actions. The defendant's lack of remorse is insidious, leaving this court no assurances that the defendant will not repeat this type of behavior in the future. And their prosecutors are using this all as an example of why they say probation isn't going to work for Tory. They say, well, legally, first of all, the fact that the jury found aggravating factors, that means if Hereford agrees to those aggravating factors, the great bodily harm and the presence of a gun, legally Tory is not eligible for probation just based on that. But prosecutors in this memo make the argument that even if he wasn't, he can't be supervised under probation, and they list all these reasons talking about his pretrial conduct, and the assault on the singer is one of them. You can see how they describe it here. Also cite his song Money Over Fallouts from his 2020 album Daystar, which when I saw that I kind of laughed because I remember I saw somebody online saying that, oh, if only prosecutors would listen to Tory's album Daystar, you know, they'll realize he didn't do it. And it's like, well, yeah, it looks like they did listen to it. And the song Money Over Fallouts includes the line, gotta see a couple of questions. How the fuck can you get shot in your foot? Don't hit no bones or tendons. Theme of the memo is definitely just the havoc that he's caused in Megan's life. And it talks about how he's waged a campaign of misinformation, basically aimed at humiliating and re-traumatizing her. It has, it ends with, it says, words have power and the pen is oftentimes mightier than the sword. In this case, Daystar Peterson, that's Tory's real name, used both. Not content to have hurt the victim by use of his sword, gun, he also used his pen. His online posts for nearly 3 years have re-traumatized the victim. It continues, his online reach is worldwide, millions of followers plus casual observers, and the defendant's statements embolden his followers so that they too have been complicit in re-traumatizing the victim. He is responsible for the effect of his words and his actions. So this is a recommendation to Judge Hereford. Obviously he has, as the judge, the ultimate say in what he's going to sentence Tory to. And but with the violation of the court orders is obviously going to be a strong thing for him to consider. And prosecutors cite the breach of the protective order at the Rolling Loud festival, and then there was his brief jailing in April of 2022 for posting a DNA evidence report in violation of a protective order that had been issued over the discovery. And then he also had a comment about Megan that they said caused her a lot of trauma and harassment online. Also cites his jail call, is kind of infamous in the case jail call to Kelsey Harris after the shooting, where he is pretty profusely apologetic. And it says, the defense argued unconvincingly at trial that the jail call and apology text were apologies about the defendant allegedly sleeping with both Miss Harris and the victim. The entire call and apology text, when viewed together with the other evidence presented at trial, can only be rationally interpreted as an apology for the defendant shooting the victim. And this reminds me of exactly what Alex Bott, one of the prosecutors, said in his closing argument. They focused a lot in their closing argument on that phone call. They really went through it line by line. Remember, he said that he and Kathy Ta had, you know, gone through it line by line, and they just couldn't figure out what else he could be talking about. And exactly, that's what they say here in the sentencing memorandum, that is Tory admitting guilt. And as such, his lack of remorse can be appropriately considered by the court as an aggravating factor. And this is legally based on the fact that there was a confession in the beginning, and now he's not taking responsibility. And prosecutors say that Hereford can consider Tory's lack of remorse as a basis to deny probation. And they say that he's failed to exhibit any remorse, which begs the question of whether he was even sorry when he apologized to Megan in the text message and to Kelsey in the jail call. And it says, wonders if those were genuine or just driven by an effort to maintain silence. And it says, except for the jail call admission and his apology text to the victim back in July 2020, the defendant has spent nearly 3 years since that time waging a campaign of misinformation to re-traumatize the victim. He said Lanez not only lacks remorse, he is clearly incapable of accepting any responsibility for his own actions. The defendant's lack of remorse is insidious, leaving this court no assurances that the defendant will not repeat this type of behavior in the future. So the 13-year recommendation, as my article notes, comes as Lanez's lawyers are asking the appellate court to disqualify Judge Hereford. It's kind of crazy that they're doing that and not filing a sentencing memorandum. And then also, one thing I've been thinking about is that I'm not sure if Hereford is the harshest sentencer. I mean, maybe he is, but this is where I don't want to make any kind of predictions or anything like that, because I saw some people online saying, oh, she's sharing her opinion when I say that there is zero chance that appellate order is going to be passed. But no, that's not an opinion. That is a fact. There is zero chance that appellate thing is going to be passed. No judge, no appellate court is going to disqualify the judge. No judge in LA Superior Court would have granted Tory's motion for new trial. No judge would disqualify. None of that has any kind of legal reason. They could have maybe drafted a better new trial motion, but just in general, those are always kind of losing arguments, even if you have a very good legal argument. What is subjective here, and what I wouldn't want to make any bets on, is what Tory's going to be sentenced to prison to. I've always kind of just wondered that myself and not really had a good guess on it. And I think if you went judge to judge, you would see a variance on that. And I'm not convinced that it's not actually good for Tory or the defense to have Judge Hereford on this case. I mean, maybe not at this point because they've antagonized him so much, but I also don't think most judges, or hopefully any judges, would hold the actions of, a young brash attorney against the client when it comes to sentencing for conduct. I mean, my initial reaction to the 13-year recommendation is I kind of don't think he's going to get that much. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't want to make any kind of guesses anyway, but the big problem for him right now is he doesn't have effective defense advocates really arguing against anything, giving Hereford any kind of real argument about why he shouldn't do the aggravating factors, why he should go less, why he should do anything. But I mean, my knowledge of Judge Hereford is that he was a DA for a few years, but he was a criminal defense attorney, had his own office for a bunch of years before he was appointed to the bench. And just kind of how he was in trial, just kind of, he wasn't super aggressive. I mean, I just don't think he would actually be the worst judge to have at sentencing. And the problem with those judge recusals is, first of all, it's just never going to happen. It's way too late. But those 170.6 motions that you can file within 10 days of your case being assigned to a judge, the problem with that is, the judges hate him so much that there's kind of, whispers that there's a system in place that there can be it can backfire on you if you disqualify the judge, because you're not just ending your case. Your case is going to go to another judge, and then you've burned your disqualification, and it might be a judge that you really don't like. And there's kind of, whispers that they have a system in place that assigns 170.6 cases to, a judge that you might not like, to make sure that they don't do that again. So, I mean, it's kind of baffling to me that they they even think it would help them to disqualify Judge Hereford, because, you know, like I said, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if he gets less than 13 years. Maybe not at this point, with his attorneys not doing any kind of advocacy for him other than just this weird appellate thing. But I mean, maybe hopefully they'll come up with something and have a good presentation next week, because I don't know. I just think, especially in sentencings, it's like one of the most subjective things that a judge can actually do. I mean, they have guidelines obviously from the state law, but I think there's a lot of room for Judge Hereford to do things here. So there's just no mitigating factors here. So he's going to want to probably stick definitely with the mid range, which is like 9 to 11. But is he going to be willing to go up to 13 with the aggravating factors is kind of the question. And prosecutors here, you can see they really make the argument that he needs to, but you know, it's a couple years, and it's a couple years of someone's life, and that, you know, that's the argument here. It's not whether Judge Hereford should be recused. That does not help the defendant. It's just this loser of an argument that just it should be, you know, hopefully they're working on their own defense here and really gonna put on a big hearing. But it's supposed to be a bifurcated hearing, like I said in another video, with the aggravating factors considered first and then sentencing after that, and with, you know, victim impact statement possible from Megan. Tory might have character witnesses, that kind of thing. I don't know if they're going to submit statements or want to speak. It could be a pretty big 2-day hearing. But I'll be, of course, covering the hearing, and I invite everybody to subscribe to my website, legalaffairs.intrials.com, and go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm getting into this medium, and I'm planning on doing some more videos as things get going here. So thanks for checking me out, and see you later.